Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the work session for the May work session. We're going to start
No, she was for a couple days.
with calling the roll. Lori, you want to call the roll, please?
Commissioner D'Amelia.
Here.
Commissioner McCluskey.
Here.
Commissioner Siegel.
Here.
Commissioner Lewis.
Present.
We have, Chris is absent. Commissioner McGarity.
Here,
I'm sorry.
here, right here.
I was looking for Andy. Commissioner Lewis.
Here.
Commissioner Holmes.
Here.
Commissioner Wexler.
Here.
And Commissioner Connell is absent. Commissioner Lewis.
Oliva, I'm here.
Oh,
And you.
I'm
And
here,
you.
present. All right, we'll start out with the yearly audit report. Oh, yeah, we got to do pledge allegiance, I'm sorry. It's been a while.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, now we'll start. Sorry about that.
Hello, everyone. If you recall, according to our administrative code, we are to rotate our independent auditors every 6 years, which you appointed a new auditing firm for 2016. Stephen Koutsouplakis, who is a partner with that firm, Barbicane Thornton and Company, is here to present results of the audit. It will be brief overview type of presentation, but he is here with us tonight to let you know how it all went.
All right. Thanks for having me. And as Amy mentioned before, this is our first year doing the township's audit. All right. On the screen there, you'll see some of the results of the audit and the deadlines. As part of the audit process, we did put together the DCD report for Amy, and she did file that online by April 1st, the due date, and she did it a few days beforehand. We are also engaged to audit the township's basic financial statements. They are not done as of right now. The reason being is under professional standards, the financial statements of the Haverford Township Free Library have to be incorporated into these reports. They're not due to the township until May 15th from their auditor, so once we get those, we'll wrap up the statements. But we feel we've done enough work where I can come and talk and tell you what kind of opinion we're going to give the financial statements. We did give the statements an unmodified opinion. The clean opinion is the highest level that you can receive. As part of our audit process, we do consider the township's internal controls over financial reporting for the purpose of planning our audit approach. This year, since it was a first-year audit, we did put a lot of emphasis on all the control cycles, receipts, disbursements, payroll. Going forward, we'll probably rotate those and focus on one or two each year. But this year, we did all the cycles because it was a first-year audit. We didn't have any experience with the township. Based on that review of internal controls, there are no deficiencies that we became aware of where we feel that there could be a breakdown in controls that where a material misstatement would occur. Overall, we feel that the township's controls are operating effectively, so we are comfortable with that. Our report, we expect to date that sometime in June once we get all wrapped up. Then, as part of the audit process, since the township does spend more than $750,000 in federal awards, we are required to do what's called a single audit in accordance with the OMB uniform guidance. And that report will also be dated June of 2017. This year, the program that we looked at as part of the single audit process was the Community Development Block Grant Funds. Of the township's total federal expenditures of $765,000, that made up $586,000 of it, or approximately 77% of total federal dollars spent. We did give the township an unmodified opinion on compliance. Some of the results, the fund balance levels as of year end. I focused on the three major funds, the general fund, the capital projects fund, and your SOAR fund. All three funds this past year did experience increases. The general fund this year ended with a fund balance of $17.8 million compared to $15.8 million the year before. So it's almost a $2 million increase from the previous year. Of that $17.8 million, $9.2 million is considered to be unassigned. It means there's no earmarks, you can use it wherever you want. The rest of it has restrictions or has been committed by the board for certain purposes. And that 9.2 of unassigned fund balance is approximately 22% of your total budget for this past year. The capital projects fund this year went from 12.8 up to $18 million. Reason being is this past year, the township issued general obligation bonds for the purpose of certain capital projects, the building, the library expansion, and so forth. The proceeds and the transfer in from the general fund outpaced the capital expenditures this past year, so that explains that increase. And then your sewer fund experienced an increase from $11 million to 12.1 this past year. So, its trends this past year, there was an increase in real estate tax collection due to an increase in millage from 7.54 mils to 7.786 mils. You'll see here, this is the general fund data this past year. General fund data general fund revenue came in at $42 million versus $40.3 the year before. The expenditures remain consistent from year to year. Also this past year, the general fund made a transfer to the capital projects fund of a little over $1 million, and they received a transfer in from the sewer fund of $600,000. The budget that was passed, it was a balanced budget that was passed, and this year the actual results came in at $1.9 million, where revenues exceeded your expenses and your financing and your transfers out. So overall increase in fund balance. Sewer fund, this past year, the revenues and expenses did remain fairly consistent from year to year. Your revenues were a little bit over $5 million each year, and your expenses were about $3.4 million each year. And then the transfers this year, the $600,000 is a transfer to the general fund. The fund is the status of your two pension plans. You have your police pension and your non-uniform. As of 12/31/16, the police pension was 66% funded, and then all the required payments were made. Your required MMO into the plan was made. The non-uniform pension was covered, which covers everybody else. As of 12/31/16, it was 70% funded, and once again, all payments are current and were made timely. The other post-employment benefit obligation, these are your benefits you offer to retirees other than pensions. As of the latest valuation, which was January 1st, 2016, your police pension was showing an unfunded liability of $38.8 million and your non-uniform unfunded liability of $4.4. And that's just actuaries' projections of future benefit payments out compared to assets that are set aside to fund that liability. And as of right now, there are no assets set aside. It's not funded. And there is no requirement to fund it. So I'll point that out.
That's in real dollars versus the previous slide, which was a percentage.
Yeah. The previous slide was.
No, go ahead, answers.
Well, they're both real. They're both projections.
Yeah.
Yeah, but one, the pensions, you're funding it. You have trust set up for each plan. You're setting aside assets. With the OPEB, there's nothing been set up yet. It hasn't been funded, but you're not required to.
How does that compare to other municipalities that you audit? Are we?
It's pretty consistent. Only a handful have set up trusts to start funding it, so you're not any different than anybody else.
Amy, on those percentage numbers, I thought when we talked about this a month or two ago, they were higher than what was on the slide before.
Yes, you are correct. If you remember, we have an actuarial valuation done every 2 years.
Okay.
So there is one being done right now as of 1/1/17. That's the official funding. That's when the official calculation's done. That's when the official calculation of funding is submitted to the Commonwealth and all those things. So what we were looking at before was as of the last official valuation, which was as of 1/1/15. These are estimates that Stephen is referring to. As I said, the official one will be done as of 1/1/17. But I would expect to see the funding go down a little bit. If you remember, 2015 was not a good year for investments, and it wasn't for pension plans either. 2016, we rebounded, but we were still beneath our assumed rate of return, which is still 8.25. And that's the rate that we're continuing to bring down.
Right.
But as we bring it down, that means the liability will tick up a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so what we are waiting for is the official calculation, which is with the 1/1/17 valuation.
And when do we expect that?
We probably won't get the official document until June or July.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. As part of the audit process, we only had a few audit adjustments that we proposed to Amy. She did agree with those and make them and posted them. One thing I want to point out is 2 years down the road, there is a new GASB that's the township wants to implement. The GASBs they dictate the rules for how the township reports with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. 75 has to do with the OPEB liability. Those large numbers that I explained to you before, as of right now, the only place that shows up is in your footnotes. Starting in 2018, that's going to show up on your balance sheet. So that's the first time the liability will be on your balance sheet. So it'll just be like your same as your pension liability, how that first came onto your balance sheet a few years ago. In 2018, your OPEB is going to come onto the books also. This past year, there was we implemented a new fair value standards, GASB 72. And when you get to final report, the only place that you'll see that is in the footnote disclosures. It kind of explains how your investments are valued. During the audit, there was cooperation from management and all members of staff. Before the audit started, we issued a planning list to Amy and her staff, and everything we requested she should provide to us, so there were no delays in that area. And then the audit results were reviewed with Amy prior to this meeting, so she did see the numbers. So nothing I'm saying today is surprising to her. Other than that, that's a brief overview. Statements will be done in June, and once they're done, if you'd like me to come back and talk with them a little more, I'm happy to do that.
Great.
That's great. Thank you. All right, any questions, anyone? All right, that being done, now the construction manager's update. I'm sorry, my microphone. That's why I can't hear myself. The construction manager's update. Better? Okay.
Good evening. Discuss the costs. The exposure on the contingency has actually come down 6% over the last month. So currently there is a 37% exposure on the contingency, which approved through negotiations of some items to reduce that. Regarding the schedule, we are still on target for the early September first floor move-in and the early December second floor move-in of the building. Currently right now they are just about done with masonry walls on the first floor interior as well as the exterior. They are doing overhead rough-ins of mechanical piping, mostly plumbing, and they're doing hangers for ductwork and sprinkler and everything else. Roughing in conduit, getting the electrical room ready, and now they're up on the second floor also starting to do that work and some masonry work. Looks like the roof is scheduled to start the latter part of next week, and then at that point we'll start to get close to having a dry building, so then finishes can obviously follow through once the building dries out. The basin on the outside is being done in like 4 stages. Currently, it's about 45% complete. Look to by the end of 2 weeks, all wrapped up. Looking at so all the utilities are coming to the project, and we expect all that to be wrapped up within the next several weeks as well. Questions?
You have any questions?
So what's the expected completion date?
The early December for the total building move-in, and then the latter part of that month will take up the rest of that site work as well.
So the police will be...
Police will be in the building the beginning of September. Then the contractor will, about a month after that, will start the demolition of that existing building and start that site work project out there. So they'll still have access to the building while that's going on. So the building will be fully occupied in December. Police will occupy it in September.
What about the township?
December.
Number 1.
December 1?
Yeah, the township's all second floor. Second floor will be done first week of December.
So you've made up the time that you lost?
They have made up that time. It's still behind what the original was, but they had cited some delays. We're not totally in agreement with those days, and we're continuing to negotiate that. But right now, it looks like all the materials are coming for move-in from the township end for those dates, and I think those days are set in concrete, and they've remained the same for the last several months.
What are the delayed days at now?
It'll be 72 days.
It's down from last time. Was
Yeah, it's
81.
down. Last it was in the 80s.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
John, the police department crime update?
Thank you, Commissioner. For April 2017. Parking tickets issued 285, 281 traffic citations, 225 written warnings. We had a burglary on Woodland Drive, which was domestic related, another one on Rosemont Avenue, which was also domestic related. Arrests were made on both burglaries. and a burglary attempt on Marybrook Drive with the screen was removed from a window. We had a sex offense at the Quarry Center. It was employee on employee, and the suspect was arrested. He confessed and will be arrested. He's been arrested since then the warrant was issued. So from 4/1, April 1st to April 22nd, we had 20 cars entered. Once again, most of them being in the 8th Ward, a couple, one on Chestnut, and that the keys were stolen in Lower Merion Township, and whoever stole the keys came back and got into the car. Wallet and credit cards were taken. 4 attempted thefts from vehicles, most of them also in the 8th Ward. So it's continuing. We have made arrests, and what I said before, it's not just one group of people. It's groups and groups just keep on coming to the township, not just us, everywhere else. So we're doing our best. We've moved undercover officers and unmarked cars into those areas. But as soon as we saturate one area, it pops up somewhere else. So they come in from different parts of different counties, and it's easy picking, as you can see. It's a continual thing for the past year and a half. It's been continual. Canine usage, we had 2 vehicle investigations, drug arrests, AOJ for Chester, Tinnick, and Radnor. We had an alarm with a residence unsecured, which the canine checked and the vacant house checked. And also we had the canine competition. Steve, I'm sure you'll talk about that at a later time. So that's my report.
All right, thank you. It's a pleasure. Commissioner committee updates?
Well, thank you. I will give a brief update on the canine competition, which was held at the middle school. It was a wonderful event, and it was well attended. It was unbelievably well attended. And I'd like to report that Haverford Township came in first. So our dogs did a tremendous job. We had canines from all over Delaware County, including the Port Authority, right, Chief?
That's correct.
So it was very interesting. I urge everyone who, I think you're going to do this every year, are you, Chief?
Yes, this is the second year for
The second year. I mean, it was a great event. I wish everyone can come out and see just how they operate. And their agility, they did search and rescue, right? Or search, really. Not rescue, but search so much. And apprehension. So congratulations to Haverford Township Police.
All right. Any other committee updates?
And Jimmy was there, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, well, thanks for that.
Yeah, Haverford did do very well. I'll tell you, they were impressive.
Took first place. So.
Yep.
There you go.
Well, it's the training, really. I mean,
How many teams competed?
it was a lot.
Oh, it was all over Delaware County.
Delaware County.
How many teams were there?
I think there was 12 teams, I believe.
At least,
the total number,
yeah.
12 teams.
Excluding the Port Authority, and that dog had just started being trained, so.
That's
All
impressive.
right, 12 teams. All right, moving on, satellite dishes.
Yeah, I had asked what our ordinance was, and maybe we should discuss this, because more and more people may be putting up satellite dishes in the years to come, and they can get very ugly looking. So Lori, you want to tell us where we stand with that for the township?
The township does have regulations in its zoning code. It's found at section 726 in the supplemental regulations. We require a permit, and in all zoning districts, the use is by special exception. This ordinance was written back at a time when satellite dishes were pretty massive structures. They were several feet across, and didn't really contemplate the small dishes that are being employed by DirecTV and some of the other providers now. I don't know if you want to continue to keep this. People are not coming in for permits. If there's a new installation and we become aware of it, we can enforce the ordinance that is in place. We do require, again, a permit to be obtained, and in Haverford Township, you can't get a permit unless you go to the zoning hearing board and get a special exception, and that's in all districts, residential, non-residential. It doesn't matter if it's the little micro dishes or if it's a big dish. We might want to look at modifying it to put size limits that anything over a certain size goes to the zoning board and modify your ordinance that way. We do
I'd like
have.
to see that.
Yeah.
We do have restrictions on the placement of satellite dishes in a front yard for ground-mounted satellite dishes. They're not permitted to be there. We've actually had one moved, I think it was in the 4th Ward, at one point off of Lawrence Road. It was on a corner property, and it had been in a front yard, and we made them move it into a rear yard.
So the smaller ones, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the smaller DirecTV ones, are they permitted on the front of the house, or do they have to be in the backyard?
Right now, our regulations don't allow for the placement of satellite dishes in a front yard.
Of any size?
Yeah, for the.
I want to make sure that's solid. Is it solid?
I think you want to take another look at it because where you're talking about roof mounted, sometimes that's where you have to place it in order to get the signal because satellites only travel in certain paths. So you get a less reliable signal if the satellite dish is in certain locations. So I think that maybe you want to take another look at it. It's been a long time since this ordinance was last, it doesn't look like it was amended at all very recently. It's a 1987
Yeah,
ordinance.
this was 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
These satellite
But,
dishes back then were
massive.
8 feet across.
Right.
but there's federal preemption. We can't regulate any satellite dish in a residential property that is 1 meter or less in diameter under the Code of Federal Regulations. So we can't regulate any of those. We're strictly preempted.
I admittedly do not know a lot about this area, but isn't the trend moving away from satellite dishes in general, where it's moving to the more
Yes.
wires and FiOS and
Yeah.
Comcast? I mean,
More cable.
yeah.
Actually, cable companies starting to lose customers too.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but I
They're
don't.
losing,
to,
they're losing TV.
downloading.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the
TV,
but the
they're-
downloads aren't coming through satellite dishes. I just
No.
The internet's coming over the wire, though.
Right.
So it's still cable TV going to your house. It's just not TV. It's internet, and then you're streaming over.
No,
over
I
the
get that.
internet.
I just want to make sure, if we have a 30-year ordinance, I just think it'd be prudent that we look at it and say, because you never know. You can start seeing some of them pop up if deals are made. I mean, they're still doing good, DirecTV and those other.
They are, since the acquisition by Verizon. There's specials that come in the mail to tie it with your cellular account. And I've seen neighbors switch from Comcast to Dish in the area. So I'm kind of surprised you need a permit to do that, because they'll come in within 24 hours, have you up and running on the new service, just like when you switch from Comcast to.
Really, that fast?
Yeah.
Well, they can't get a permit. You can't require a permit if it's a meter or less, which I
It's
think is
more like
most
a
of them.
telephone. They're treated more as under the FCC and.
Yeah,
So with those
Utility
types,
type of
with those types that
Just have
Bill's
Laura- I
talking
just sent you the
about,
federal regulation, so you have it,
Oh, you did.
to Lori.
Oh, thank you.
so with those type, the bill just mentioned, you can't, Dan's saying you can't regulate whether it's in the front or in the back?
I haven't seen the regulation yet.
Yeah.
Commissioner Siegel just sent it to me.
Yeah, it's 47 CFR 1.4000, and you can't put any restrictions on residential satellite dishes that are 1 meter or less in diameter.
So you can put them in the front? That's my question. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
The south. That's the rule.
So if it's in the front, you can't stop them from doing it. That's ugly, man. Ugly.
it was enacted in 2001.
Was it?
Yeah, 2001.
Power of someone's lobby.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes,
can't
sir.
imagine you'd want to put them in the front of your house, though.
I
that
think
you'd,
most homeowners, you can mount it on the side
Lawrence
yeah,
Road
and face it
is
above the
just-
roof line to
yeah,
face the south.
or use another service if that's,
Fairmont,
if that's what you want to
Well,
do.
all the satellite trajectories, they all have to face the south to get the
Right.
signal. so.
Okay, so
Well-
to be clear, we got, Larry.
I'd just say it seems to me that this is an analysis worth undertaking and seeing if to the extent that we thought to regulate this 30 years ago, technology has caught up with us. This isn't very specific, but, if we can still require permits for anything more than 3 feet across, then we can it may be worth re-examining this in light of the federal regulations and in light of modern times, just so we don't have a useless statute on our books,
I agree.
you know?
And speaking of ordinances that we enacted many years ago, we tabled the bicycle regulations, and
See that on the
that
agenda.
is not on here, and I thought that was going to come up either at this work session or at our next meeting, in light of the fact that the chief had suggested there was no reason to continue those, and no one licenses a bicycle.
Have we
We could,
made those changes to the bicycle ordinance?
It was a
So that
repealer.
we have something that we can look at?
no, but we can put a draft together pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
just a repealer of the
Can we have it
sections.
done by the next meeting?
Yes. Would you
Okay.
like to add it to the agenda for next Monday?
Please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that? Sure. Okay. Looks like everybody's okay.
I think the language of my motion is all you need, and I gave that to Gloria.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion on that, or we're just gonna let them put something together?
Oh, yeah, if they can.
Then we'll discuss it at
We could
the,
discuss it in another meeting. Yeah, I think we should look at it.
okay. Moving on, Act 172.
That's the fireman.
Yeah, the
Fireman,
firearm.
Tax relief.
I thought you weren't going
I
to
thought
talk
you were
about
going to
this.
discuss that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought, okay.
Not going to
That long
discuss
Well, it's not
time
that
ago.
we're not discussing it.
It's
It's
on-
not something that's on our May meeting.
Right.
Right, it's not going to be discussed
discuss
next
you.
week.
So we're gonna discuss it at the
That's the
June
table.
meeting,
Yeah.
okay? I'm sorry. Traffic? Ordinance number P5, 2017? Anybody, okay. P6, 2017, we discussed. I'm sure we want to discuss more about that. That's a medical marijuana.
Well, Larry and I, Commissioner Holmes and I would like to make sure that we get the word out, since this special meeting is being televised, that the township is going to certainly pass an ordinance.
consider.
We're going to consider.
Consider an ordinance at the next,
Next week.
next week's meeting.
Yeah.
That'll be the first reading. So we want the residents to be aware and informed that that's what this board may do.
Well, and
And
that
certainly
prior to
some.
this meeting.
And then we're gonna post that on our website
Yeah.
as well.
And we have a special meeting prior to this one.
Public hearing.
Right, a public hearing is required in any of our ordinances that affect zoning, that we had a public hearing about, I guess, limiting the two types of marijuana, a dispensary or a growing facility, to our C5 industrial.
C5 shopping center for retail, and then for the industrial for the
Industrial for the growers
growers.
and the dispensaries in the C5 shopping center district, and that would comport with the new state law.
And as was helpfully pointed out to me by Commissioner Siegel, when we discussed this last, it's a very important reminder for everyone to understand this is a zoning ordinance that just sets classifications and limits the area that any of these that these dispensaries or growing facilities could be located at. It is not yet an approval of any such dispensary. There's a great deal of red tape and bureaucratic gymnastics that anybody has to go through at the state level, at the county level, and then at the township level before anything can actually happen. But it is crucial for us to first and foremost establish the limited areas in which these facilities can operate. So this is a very necessary part of our regulation of these, and not a step toward selling pot on every corner in Haverford Township.
Yeah, and like Kelly was saying earlier, our solicitor, that there's very limited things that we can restrict because the law is pretty restrictive itself, and that we can only restrict, the zoning of that. But it is very restrictive, the law. Okay, and we'll have that discussion at the commissioners' meeting.
Well, it comes up at the first reading.
Right, the first reading. And
Right, I mean, since it is under consideration, if anybody wanted to discuss it tonight, we can, as it's
Yeah.
appropriate for a work session.
Absolutely.
I will repeat what I said earlier at the meeting, which is I do think it's important that we act sooner than that we be prepared before we start getting applications and not have already some regulatory framework in which we can that we can confine these facilities. So I think the sooner we act, and every township in our 8-county region is going through the same exercise, as are the counties. It does require 2 readings as an ordinance, and therefore any action we take next week, regardless of whether anybody feels that's premature, is tempered by the fact that we have to do it again in June, and that certainly gives more members of the public the opportunity to speak and be heard on this issue. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But we certainly invite people to come next week, watch this meeting and any discussions folks have today, and also, it'll be on the agenda, so it's an agenda item for purposes of the Citizens Forum.
So, for purposes of the discussion, I think, as you were saying, Larry, these facilities can be in C5 districts and industrial districts as well?
Now, the retail can be in the C5 shopping center districts.
Let's be very careful. Let's not say retail. The dispensaries.
Okay.
There's 2 things. There's
Okay.
dispensaries and there's growers.
Right.
So the
Correct.
dispensaries, these are strictly medical, we still are talking about medical dispensaries requiring
Right, okay, so the
prescriptions and all that.
dispensaries are in the C5, and then the growers
Can be in industrial.
Light industrial.
have to be in light industrial.
Okay.
And there's 2.
And let's talk about the schools and churches and whatnot too. So people that live around there should know that.
Yeah, they can't be within 1,000 feet.
Correct, Lori?
Correct, and that's the standard by state law.
Yeah.
Just so the public is aware of what some of the
I
regulations are.
assume that is a hard standard, meaning we can't make it 1,500 feet. We have to live by that
Right.
state standard.
That's what we-
That's in the statute.
Not if you want to be able to defend your ordinance. The scope of input by local governments was very narrowly defined by the state. And it said you must allow for growers where other manufacturing is provided, and you must allow for a dispensary where other commercial activities are permitted. So this isn't something that the township can pass on and say, no, we're not going to do this. You're going to do it with or without a local zoning control in place. So it's your opportunity to get a local zoning control.
Right, and I think that's the important thing for the public to understand, is that the state has passed this law, like it's happening. It's not something it's not our law. So the state has their law, and there's a limited, specific, spelled out regulation that the townships are allowed to consider. And that's what we're trying to do next week before any applications or permits are issued within the township. And as Lori said, there's 2 things. If we don't act now, the applications are coming in, and they would come in without any ordinance on the books. And if you try to over-restrict based on the state law, the likelihood is that there would be a challenge, and then you would be left with no ordinance whatsoever. So, the ordinance that has been presented to us is the attempt, consistent with the state law that was passed, to have our influence that is allowed under that state law.
And that the ordinance will be posted on the website.
Correct.
On the front page tomorrow. And it's already posted, or it's already posted on the Planning Commission?
It's on the website. If you just search the term medical marijuana, you can bring it up right now. It's been posted. But it will be placed on the front page of the website so that when you open the home page, you're going to be able to see a link directly to it to make it more visible.
So Laurie, we'll have a presentation, right? And then it would.
Kelly will do another presentation.
I think it'd be helpful
Monday.
to identify where these dispensaries or growers could be located based on locations of churches and schools.
Maybe we could give you something visually so
Yeah,
that you
I
don't
think that'd
just
be
have
helpful just to see.
narrative. Right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, moving on to the sale of 516 Eagle Road. That's going up for public auction. We've talked about this many times.
Can I just ask a question of, is a public auction required? It can't be sold by traditional means? Is that a state requirement? Is that the way to?
You
I
have to
assume-
have a public auction or have it
Bid.
bid.
Or you could have it like a closed,
Kind of could set like the highest bid.
we could set, I'm sorry, we could just set, this is our floor?
Well, you could have a public bid of the property and
Them all down.
and, yeah, and just accept the highest bid or reject all of the bids, but then you start all over again. This way, it's a public auction, and what was determined by the board
It's not absolute though, right?
is that it would be an absolute sale if we
Is it?
hit a certain threshold.
Oh, okay, so it has a floor to it.
Right, right. So, and in that way, there would be added value to a potential buyer if they knew that there wasn't additional further regulatory approvals needed, that they could put in an offer, make a bid in good
Knowing.
faith. And they have to pre-qualify in order to participate in the auction. And they have to have a certified check in the amount of, I think it's 20%, things of that nature. So there's a number of things that have to be done. They have to show that they have the funding available. It's not going to be subject to them getting financing. You have to walk in there with the means to be able to close.
Maximum of 2 lots?
Maximum of 2 lots.
That's already been,
Recorded.
It's
yeah, that's
restricted.
already within the.
It's of record.
On record, yes.
Yeah.
And the thinking, Commissioner Lewis, was that, you could have the auction, somebody wins the auction, you still have to go back to the board for approval. The concern was that would leave money on the table
Yeah,
as opposed to.
I think that makes sense.
As opposed to somebody knowing that if they bid and buy it there, they bought it.
You just got to get above the floor.
Right, we just make sure that the auctioneer has, that the board has acted and set a certain level over which the auctioneer has the discretion. That has the absolute authority to sell the
Right.
property.
Right.
Right? Pretty good? All right, Resolution 2049, which is the 2017, which is the traffic signal approval for all the new streetscape there on that block between Mill and the middle school.
That is the pedestrian signal, Chief?
Yes, that's correct. Part of that is pedestrian signal, which is the strobe lights, not strobe lights, the LED lights. That'll be activated by manual pushing of the button. And I believe that's regulated by time also. It goes off in late hours after school is closed. So it's an improvement there, especially for that roadway where you have 2 crossing guards and a large number of middle-aged school kids across there, so.
Is that
Middle school,
Fairfield
not
also, is that
middle-aged
across?
What's that?
Middle school children, not middle-aged children.
School children. You know what I meant.
We are middle-aged children, they're
Yes.
middle school children.
Well, I don't know.
That's for middle-aged people also, by the way.
I just don't want to get them too
Sometimes we are.
confused.
And is Fairfield Road, Darby and Fairfield is right there too?
Yes.
Right in front of the school.
While we're on this topic, I should note, between the meetings, this project has caused an issue with the location of the YMCA summer camp, which had been held at the middle school for a number of summers prior to 2017. It has been moved to the Chestnut Walled School. We have been, Mr. Gentili, Chief Viola, myself, people from the YMCA, and people from the school district met with the neighbors in the Chestnut Walled area last week to discuss how we can deal with the increased traffic that's going to come to that area this summer, because the programs are all being moved over to the Chestnut Walled School temporarily for this summer because of the work that's being done in front of the middle school, and the idea that, frankly, it was just going to affect the potential safety of the 300 or so kids who get dropped off and picked up for this camp each day. So that is underway. YMCA is working with the school district to figure out potential busing to and from the camp. And we expect to get back together again with the residents in the 6th Ward, and particularly around Chestnut Walled School, to address their concerns. But that is the unintended consequence of the streetscape work that we're doing on Darby Road.
All right.
May
I will
ask the
say,
chief a
everybody
question,
has been
please?
extremely
Sure.
cooperative and very helpful with regard to addressing the neighbors' concerns there. And we had a very very productive meeting 2 Wednesdays ago.
Chief, I just have a question for you. It doesn't have to do with streetscape, but it made me think of the lights on Westchester Pike at Eagle and Westchester Pike especially. There was a Acme employee who was actually blind and trying to cross that street. She had a difficult time crossing it. Does that, I don't remember, and I don't recall, I helped her cross it, but I can't remember if there was some audio to let her know.
There is not at that intersection.
How do we get that? Because, I mean, I really felt bad for this woman. She really,
I have to apply for it, I assume. Dave, you have more information than I would on that.
You have to change the signal plan. You have to apply to the state. Apply to the state, fund it. I don't know what the warrants are for the, it's the audible.
There's one at Penn and Lancaster.
Yeah. We have them in other places in the
Yeah.
township.
well, yeah, I don't think we have them on Westchester Pike, and I think we should. I really do. I mean,
It's up to this board, you can apply, and again, you just gotta fund it, and
we have to fund it?
I just don't know what the warrants are. You know, I don't know what the
Yes.
warrants are requirements of the state form.
But that's a difficult intersection there because I don't think you can do a full cross on one crosswalk there. I think you have to stop in the middle and wait for the next cycle because of the way that.
How long it is.
It's a long walk and because of that traffic cycle there.
Well, how do we look into this?
Pretty easy.
Can you,
I
Dave?
can just double check, the board wants to get double check the warrants, what the requirements are, get order of magnitude costs.
Does she walk from there? Because she lives in Lennox somewhere, I think.
She had to take the bus near Starbucks, and she was trying to get across that street. I mean,
Crosses every day, yeah.
I'll tell you what, I was getting air in my tire, and when I saw that, I mean, I tell you, the vehicle's making a right, they could have killed her. They really could have killed her.
I believe by state law, she does carry cane. By state law,
She does.
They're supposed to stop when somebody's with the cane, but like anything else, I'll tell you what happens there.
I can certainly look into that.
Maybe even put a sign there for, blind crossing
Yeah,
or
no,
something.
when you put your foot into the crosswalk, people are supposed to stop, and they don't.
I'll tell you what, and I'm serious, she almost got hit a couple of times. Even when I crossed her, we both almost got hit. It's
That might have been
amazing.
you, Commissioner.
I think
Might have been aiming for Steve.
well, I was on the right.
That might have been the worst thing that happened to her that day.
Yeah.
I was on the left side of her, so yeah,
Trying
you're
to
probably
avoid
right.
it.
You're probably aiming for me. No, but no
Look, it's admirable, and I mean, that is, it's the only place people ought to cross that highway, so I certainly support, directing our engineer to find out the requirements and the information. I mean, if we have one at Penn and Lancaster, why we wouldn't have one at Westchester Pike and Eagle is beyond me.
Yeah, I mean, she was incredibly grateful.
I think you should
but-
consider
but
one
I
at
felt- I
Manoa as
felt,
well.
You know what? We should have something here. I mean, it's
The other question is it better to do it at Glendale, which has a longer, which isn't as crazy as Eagle and Darby?
it's something we can look at. I mean,
And it's to the center of the it's right into the center of the shopping center.
But I
as
believe
opposed
she
to-
was crossing there because she was, she could take the bus at Glendale too. You're right.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, either one, we need one there.
I mean, I'd do all three. I would do Manoa, I would do Glendale,
Yeah,
and I would do Eagle. But if we're stuck with one, it seems to me the center of the shopping center makes the most sense.
I agree.
Glendale.
Did you
And
hear
the
that,
lights-
Dave? He
the
would like
light
to try all three, but
going
if we have to
across
get
would
one,
be faster. You could
that's
get
the
through
one we
one.
would do.
Yeah.
Okay?
Just let her know that. That's the place to cross.
Like you think is the best spot to apply for? Is that-
Westchester Pike and Glendale.
Well, let's see what they cost. If the whole thing's $500, let's do all three of them. If it's $30,
Not
$30.
$500. It's not
Can we
500.
get a grant?
We ought to be able to get a grant.
Yeah, we should be able to get a grant. I'll talk to Jamie.
But like I said, if we
I'm
have
all
it at
for
Penn-
anything to make it more walkable.
If we have it at Penn and Lancaster, it makes, and we don't have any on Westchester Pike, that makes no sense to me. Actually, I haven't, I'm not raising it now, but I mean, the intersection of Wynwood and Eagle and Haverford Road in the center of my ward is also very nerve-wracking. And there
Yes.
you have a SEPTA stop, and you have kids crossing the road there for St. Denis School, you got kids crossing the other way for the Chestnut Wall School, and you got a decent business district there. So that's something I'd like us to redo. There's no opportunity for people to walk there because everybody gets arrows.
Well, why don't we put
So
that
it's
on the
never
list too?
safe.
Might as well. I mean, if we have areas like that, we need to deal with that for public safety issues. We really need to. We should look at that too, Dave.
The timing's there.
Okay.
If we could look at the timing, I mean, in the center of Bryn Mawr, they stop, and Wayne, they stop all traffic for about 25 seconds, and everybody can cross in every direction. Then lights go, and people have to wait. You know, there's a couple intersections where we ought to do that. But, I mean, the unintended consequences are cars stretched all the way up the hill, and a lot of horns and a lot of angry people.
Take a look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Dave, you're going to look at that? Sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, and that's about it, right? We have the appointment for the library board. Larry's got the slide presentation. He is doing next week. The contract award for traffic signal maintenance contract is being awarded. And then we have several proclamations.
You have a typo there. It's W-E-L.
Oh, yeah, David.
C-H.
Welsh, not
Yeah.
Walsh.
Just Mario, just while you mentioned the PETCO projects that Larry's going to talk about, the paving of the, I guess that's the west side of Eagle Road between Katz's and the Y. PETCO is supposed to be done that by the middle of this month, just to update residents.
Yeah, you want to tell residents what we were talking about the other day when we met?
Well, yeah, Mario, myself, and Larry Gentili and Richard Doherty from the township also met with State Representative Greg Vitale and several members of PennDOT in the sense that we brought the members of PennDOT to Eagle Road, and we wanted them to view what the road condition was. As we've talked about at these meetings at length, Eagle Road was not on the 5-year projected paving schedule. So we have asked PennDOT to reconsider that, especially given that PECO is paving one half of the road now. It would seem prudent to pave the other side of the street as well at this time. And Mario and I both expressed to the members of PennDOT that we believed it certainly needed it, considering that's a main thoroughfare through our township, and the condition of the road. And nobody necessarily disagreed with that. It's just a matter of going through the process to get it listed. PennDOT was going to go reevaluate both Eagle Road and Darby Road from Katz's Pharmacy down to Westchester Pike. They heard our concerns and they're going to reevaluate it. We should hear back from them next week, and hopefully we'll have something to update at that time. No promises were made, but just to further state for the residents that this township and this board are continuing to try to represent their interests as PECO is going through the township with the necessary improvements to the gas lines and the electric lines. And we're trying to make it as painless as possible for the residents and also get improvements to the roads as a result.
Well, it's been a little bit painful in my ward, I have to tell you. There's some damage to homeowners' property that really needs to be dealt with, and Larry is aware of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the issue, and we faced that in my ward many times, Commissioner D'Amelio, with the projects that PECO has been doing over the last year and a half, and that really is something that the homeowners, when they contact Larry puts them in touch with PECO, and the repairs should be made. What I was discussing was really
I know. I'm just adding to this. What I'm saying is,
It was PennDOT was what we were.
Well, I was talking about
get that.
PennDOT.
I'm talking about the improvements at the gas lines.
I know, but I just don't want to. We did make progress. I understand. I just want to make sure clear that we're now pausing off the discussion with PennDOT, and you're talking
Closing
about
PennDOT, and
You're
I'm
talking
talking
about
the
PECO.
PECO, right?
Because we do want PennDOT did appreciate our concerns and is considering them.
And they did. I mean, to their, they did admit to us that our area has been neglected, and that over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll see a great improvement, a vast improvement in what they do, because the person that was in our area was neglecting that, and they brought somebody new in to cover this area. So they said within the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be all caught up in our road system.
No, I get that, but when you mentioned the gas lines, I wanted to remind residents that if you have damage from what InfoSource is doing, to take pictures of that damage and forward it to, I guess, you can forward it to me and I'll try to get it to Larry. But, it's okay, mistakes are gonna happen, I get that, and pavements are gonna break and lawns are probably gonna be chewed up somewhat, but let the homeowner know that you did that and you're gonna fix it, but they just walk away from it. and they don't say anything until the homeowner comes out and realizes that they have issues.
Yeah.
So I get mistakes happen, that's fine, but you need to let the homeowners know. Leave your card or something that, you know what, we broke 2 of your pavements, but we're gonna fix it.
Yeah, well,
The homeowner's gonna come out and find it like that.
we had that problem along Westchester Pike where they were doing work and broke things, and then nobody said anything, and the homeowners, is coming after the township, or, is upset with the township for the work, and it wasn't us, and then we have to call Pico to come out, and then they restored it. They did restore everything, but
Oh.
again, it's a,
Last week, Larry did have a meeting. We had a meeting here with myself, and bosses from Pico and InfoSource. I think Larry will probably give an update next week. But we made a lot of headway, and they did clean up a lot of things that we addressed over in the Westgate area, with promises that they would do much better. So we'll see what happens, but I think Larry will give a better update on that.
They were just on Westgate Road, and caused damage there already. So, they're not finished. They're gonna be there. And as I said, mistakes are gonna happen, but they need to let somebody know.
I think Larry's going to give you a phone number for that to go directly to InfoSource and Pico.
right, he's going to, that's part of his presentation next week.
Well, because he's heard a lot of
Yeah.
it, and
Yeah,
because he
we-
lives right there,
Yeah.
around the corner from me, and he heard from me the problems that we're having now.
Yeah, and you got it going on Glendale Road, too.
It's
Yeah. All right. There's anything else?
Yeah, just one other thing. And we mentioned, and we had this discussion briefly during the hearing on medical marijuana, but I think it would be a good idea for us in the future to televise any public, any
hearings?
commissioners' public hearings should be televised.
No,
So I don't know
I
if
agree with that.
anybody has any problem with that, but
Yeah,
I think it makes
I
sense.
think anytime the 9 of us are in an official meeting, we should, now that we televise everything, we ought to.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that, because I forgot that we weren't
All right, we
televising
can-
that public hearing.
We can vote on that at the public.
Does that require a vote, or we just
That
do it?
requires a vote.
I think we just do it.
Okay, we can just do it.
Yeah, I don't think it requires a vote.
If you tell Larry, Lori,
I'm sending him an email now.
he'll be
Right now.
excited.
Right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that, I'd entertain.
Let me do one other thing, I'm sorry. I want to thank many of the neighbors and this board for, as many of you know, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer and had surgery last week. She's doing well as can be. I just want to thank everyone for their thoughts and prayers and coming over and dropping off food, and this board for the fruit basket that we received. That was very nice. I appreciate that. So thank you very much for everything that you've sent our way.
Well, I will entertain a motion to.
So moved.
All right.
Aye.
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 Aye, aye, aye,
That's
aye.
all. Good night.